Welcome to Game of Leadership, the podcast for curious leaders. I'm Paula Eddy Wilcox, and today is the third episode with our wonderful guest who is talking about the pivotal moments that make them the leader they are today. I really hope you enjoy the episode. I can't wait to find out what's in store. Welcome to this week's episode of Game of Leadership, the podcast for curious leaders. I'm joined for her third and final episode by Dr Shirley Blenkinsop. Welcome back.
Welcome, everybody.
Thank you so much. And gosh, we have talked about so much over the last couple of episodes, and always interesting to chat to you, Shirley. So it's really grateful for you sharing all your knowledge and experience with us, because I know that's going to help support our listeners to be the best leaders that they can be moving forwards. So without further ado, today's episode is all about your pivotal moments. So I know that you've got one in mind particularly to share with us. So please do go ahead.
Well, yes. I mean, I think in the very first episode, we talked about leadership journey and people that had somehow influenced me or helped me on that journey, good or bad, by being role models or not, actually role modeling what not to. And going back to when I was in consulting, so going back into sort of my mid to late 20s probably, and I got this I was already a manager, as I said, and a way outside comfort zone and way outside my area of competence, which didn't resonate well with me and didn't sit well with me. And I felt quite defensive a lot of the time about what I was doing and how I was doing it. Because I was just hoping nobody would work out that I didn't know what I was doing at all. And I was lucky enough, in fact, really very lucky, I think, guardian angel moment, that a guy joined our organization, and he'd come out of industry. So he had not been a consultant, in his role. He'd actually had an industrial role, and he'd done a lot of mass mobilization and worked with some very large teams. And he was joining the organization, and one of the things that we had as an HR policy was that if somebody came from industry into consulting, that they would spend the first few weeks actually shadowing somebody who had been working for a significant period of time in consulting, and would then role model them, what to do, how to do, not only the behaviors and the tools and techniques, but also would coach them and would be there to answer any questions, and their buddy sort of thing. So they literally shadowed you sort of. So I was lucky enough to have a guy called Mark Tatham, who joined me and shadowed me at this project. And yeah, I was working very, very hard. I mean, I really am a work hard, play hard culture type of person. And I was working very, very hard. And, I was a bit overwhelmed. So I was nowhere near playing hard enough, because, if I'm not playing hard and having fun, then I'm not at my best, which we've discussed already. And at some point he said, it would be really, really great to get some feedback from you, Shirley. What do you think? And I thought, oh God, I've got so much work to do, and now he needs extra time. I didn't believe in coaching quite so much in those days. I was a much sort of harder version of myself, a much more rational version of the person that I've developed into. Thank God I've developed some emotional intelligence over the years. But then I didn't really have any emotional intelligence, I don't think, or very little. And I said, oh God, I better do it. I said, okay. So yeah, can we do that this evening? Sort of pushing it to the end of the day, and maybe we go out for have a beer and have a chat, and I'll give you some feedback and so on. And I was expecting to go out and tell him all sorts of stuff about whatever. And for me, I was not expecting to get anything out of that situation. So we had that beer. In fact, I don't think we had a beer first, but we started with a conversation, and he drew me a triangle. And I'm very mathematical, so draw me a triangle or a square or a 2x2 matrix or something. I'm like, oh yeah, great. I get excited about very little, believe me. So he drew a triangle, And he said, yeah, about management generally and leadership, but particularly about management at that stage. And he said, management is about 3 really key things. And he said, and on the top of the triangle, he wrote the word task, and he said, one of those things is task, and managing the task, organizing everything, organizing everybody, delegating roles, responsibilities, and making everything critical path and project management stuff. And he said, Shirley, you are the best I've ever seen at this. You're just amazing. And I thought, oh, thanks, that's nice, so he sort of talked a bit about that, and then he said, but there are 2 other really important elements here in terms of management and leadership, and he said, and I'm not terribly sure you're equally aware that they are equally important. And I said, okay. And he said, what do you think they are? And I said, oh, I think team's a really important one. And he said, yeah, teams are, so he wrote the word team on this second point of the triangle. And then he said, so what do you actually do to develop the team as a team in terms of, what are you actually doing? And how are you doing that? And why are you doing that? And I sort of sat there and I thought, I said, well, we go out for team dinner sometimes, and we went bowling the week before last, And he said, well, yeah, exactly. There are not many points there yet, and I've worked with very large teams. He said up to 300 people in a team, and I think there's quite a bit there that I can sort of help you with. And I was like, oh, okay. He said, so what would good look like for you? And I just thought about it and realized I didn't know the answer. I didn't know anything about team development, and that my toolkit in terms of developing teams was pretty bare. So coaching teams is just as important as coaching individuals. And then he said the third is individuals. So individuals, focusing on individuals, are growing individuals as individuals, and that could be team members, that could be key stakeholders, that could be internal stakeholders in the organization, and so on, managing up, managing sideways, leading across boundaries. And he says, well, how do you actually do that? What do you do there? And I said, well, we're sitting having this conversation, doing some feedback. And I realized during this conversation, basically he took the blinkers off and showed me blind spots that I didn't even know I had. And not only did he show me the blind spots, but he actually partnered with me, he coached me, he helped me to identify how I could close those gaps as quickly as possible. And not only that, he was a wonderful friend, and we had an awful lot of fun on that project, as I, learned by doing, learned by making mistakes. And he had my back, and he was helping me through that process. And he fundamentally changed my life. And I would say, he enabled me to become the person that I am today. And I'm eternally grateful for that. It was a real moment where I just realized there is so much more. If I defend myself and feel that I'm being attacked and defend and push away and, and try and ignore what he's saying and just stay in my little comfort zone, I'm only going to be a fraction of the person I have the potential to be. And I trust this guy. He's got nothing to gain from the situation. I thought I was there to give him feedback, In reality, he was using it as an opportunity to help me. And he made it all about me. And absolutely amazing opportunity that has completely transformed my life and has made me not only a better leader, a different universe in terms of leadership skills, as it opened up this world to, there is an awful lot out there you need to learn about leadership, and you're never going to be finished with that. But also, as I said last time, I've had a parent, which is, we are all diverse. We learn and develop in different ways. We have different personalities. One size never fits all. And so you've got to go out there and use your brain to really, not just the task, forget about task, you're good at that, you do that automatically, you don't have to think about that, but really focusing on developing the team and obviously developing every single individual on the team. And for me, my leadership has always been focusing on team and individual, because task is what I do automatically. I don't need to think about that. My brain defaults to that anyway. And I think he helped me to focus on what I needed to learn how to do better, or even learn how to do at all. Yeah, so that, I think, is my pivotal moment in my life, which is from thinking that I was always already good at what I was doing, to realize that, you know, it's like a three-legged stool, this triangle,
Yeah.
and mine only had one leg on it, so that's not very stable leadership. Me trying to sit on one leg and, you know, on this stool, and that actually, you know, leadership, we have to manage all three to get stability. And, you know, we're not going to be good at all three naturally. We've got
No.
huge learning opportunities in there, and we need to embrace that as quickly as possible and find the ways in which we best learn. So I say, I learn by doing, I learn by making mistakes, I learn by playing. We talk about games. The more I can play and try stuff out and see what works and what doesn't, I need to have a certain, you know, safety net there, and making sure that there is that safety net there, and that people are there to give me feedback, and being able to take that feedback. Because that young consultant, you know, she didn't take feedback well. She didn't like to be told that things were not great. She was trying to be some sort of perfect human being, didn't want to show her vulnerabilities. And I look back on it and think, gosh, I've learned so much since then, that if I'd have stayed, you know, with my sort of armor on, I love the Brené Brown books, you know, about you know, gifts of imperfection, and the power of vulnerability and so on. She is so spot on. She really is. You know, these actually, we need to embrace these to be better leaders. And it sounds counterintuitive. It sounds vulnerability and telling everybody that I'm crap at everything. I mean, surely that's not going to make me a better leader. It makes you a human leader, you know, and I was a one-dimensional leader at that time, or manager. I think leader's too grand a word then. But, you know, being human, the emotional intelligence, the EQ, is just as important, if not in some instances, even more important than the IQ, being clever and knowing the right answer. Because it's about, you know, leading with ownership, transferring ownership. It's about getting commitment, engagement, connection. And without emotional intelligence, you've no chance of doing any of these things. So thanks very much to Mark. And I actually, I have one son. I have 4 children, but I only have one son. And I named him after Mark. Yeah.
Fabulous.
So it's a constant reminder to me about the, you know, the growth opportunity that life represents.
Yeah. Oh, wonderful, Shirley. Thank you so much for sharing that. And it is amazing what an impact and influence just one person can have on us. I'd argue at any point in our lives, obviously, the younger we are, the more influenceable, if you like, if that's a word, we are. But because we have so many more experience, formed opinions as we get older. But you know, people can come into your lives, and I believe they come into our lives for a reason. And it sounds like Mark was that one for you. And you mentioned the guardian angel piece, and I think that's a lovely way to look at it. Just curious, how quickly did you realise how powerful this thing that was going on with Mark was on you? How powerful? How quickly did you realise the power of that?
I think the first emotion was shock. It just helped me to understand, okay, these 3 things, they're equally important. You're only really doing one of them, with maybe 5% of the team thing. You're doing absolutely nothing on the individual thing. You even thought this feedback session was a waste of time. And he's actually giving me something. I'm not giving him anything. He's doing this for me, you know. And it just sort of, I just suddenly realized, gosh, you know, it's like thinking, I guess for me, it's a transformational moment in the sense of, I'm imagine that, you know, going back to medieval times, I thought that, you know, the earth is the center of the universe, or that, you know, the earth is flat. It's not a sphere. It's actually flat, and you can fall off the end. Imagine how limiting that's going to be about, you know, what I'm prepared to do, and you know, it's just so limiting. And then the minute you realize, and it's reframed, and I think reframing is so important, because the glass half empty is also a glass half full. And, you know, humans always default to negativity. So if you can flip it, and it's the same thing, and see, oh, it's actually glass half full, and see it as a positive, there's opportunity to even more, in that sense of growth, that flipping to the positive is a huge way of just opening up the power of any situation. And the more we focus on the negative or on the loss or on the lack of, the more we're actually limiting ourselves. And I think for me, it's like they're suddenly realizing, gosh, the earth isn't flat, it's actually round. I can sail and sail and sail and sail, and I'm not going to fall off the end. I'm going to be okay, you know? And it's that sort of moment of realizing, wow, this is truly, truly powerful. I'm unlocking my own brain. I'm unlocking my own willingness to be curious, to embrace, to accept my own fallibility and my own ignorance, if you like, and develop myself further. And but again, there's a risk in that, because if we've told everyone we're the best and we know everything, and if we set ourselves, we often do set ourselves up to fail by pretending to be people we're not, which is hugely dangerous. And again, back to trust. If we're pretending to be something we're not, we're going to get found out at some point anyway. So back to trust, which is, you know, I'm a person, I'm fallible, I make mistakes, I'm vulnerable too. And I really, you know, I really want to learn and grow, and I want to help others to do this. And I think having a narrative that is human and resonates with other people, I think is also absolutely crucial as a leader. We're not there to be the invincible, the infallible superheroes. You know, we are real people, and that is also important too. And often it's our weaknesses or our vulnerabilities or our strange quirks and so on that other people love the most about us, you know. So I also think, going back to, you know, fun, that we also need to laugh at ourselves sometimes. And I think for me, I look back on that, and at the time I was like shocked and horrified. He's basically told me, you're completely crap at this job, Shirley, you know. In reality, that's what he was saying in a nutshell. But he was opening so many doors to this growth potential that I suddenly saw, wow, there's a whole universe out there. And I thought, it's just, you know, the earth is it, and it's just flat. And then suddenly, wow, you know, this is just one little tiny planet. It's pretty insignificant, really. You know, there's a whole universe out there, and there's a lot to explore and develop further. And so I'm hugely, hugely grateful to him. I mean, you know, we can think that we're far more knowledgeable than we are. And I think in reality, when we see, you know, how much knowledge is developing, how much technology is developing, how quickly it's all developing, that we know such a little bit about such a little bit about such a tiny fraction, we definitely need other people. And certainly, you know, working in the AI space has really opened my eyes to how much knowledge there is out there, and that no single person can ever know more than a tiny fraction of a fraction of a fraction of what there is to actually learn. And we're learning more and more every day. So leveraging this, partnering with others, you know, enabling and empowering others to be their best possible versions of themselves is absolutely essential for human race, I would say. We've got a lot of problems to solve in the future. You know, global warming and yeah, let's not go there because we'll never stop, but we've got an awful lot of problems to solve. And it's our kids that are going to have to solve those problems. So, you know, we do need to leverage knowledge across boundaries, and that leadership is going to be essential in order to make that happen. So,
yeah. And you are just sort of touching on opening our eyes to the art of what is possible if you take the blinkers off, if you allow other people to introduce a different lens into your world. I just think it's been absolutely fascinating listening to that, Shirley, because you know, there is so much possibility in there. And, you know, I am delighted to meet the Shirley that you are today, but to understand what's helped you get there. And my goodness me, don't we all need a mark in our lives? And it is those people that clearly can see something in us that we either don't dare believe or just have never thought of, didn't even dare think was possible, or just has not come on radar because we haven't had that possibility opened yet. So to have somebody like a Mark come in and open that up to us, and you know, when you were saying that, for those that are just listening, Shirley was sort of holding up hands as if she's got blinkers on and then opening them out wide with splayed fingers. It's just lovely that you, as you were saying it, your movements were telling the story of the difference that made for you. And I know that I've met certainly one person in my life who's had that, or helped make that huge difference for me, opened up different paths and avenues that I had no idea existed beforehand, in terms of what was possible for me to learn or do differently, or take a chance on. People that give you chances along the way. And as I've got older and those things have happened, I've often said, gosh, why are they giving me that opportunity or chance? What do they see that I'm not seeing? And then, of course, that starts a whole different, curious lane of sort of thinking, or path of inquiry, as you called it beautifully before. So what a fascinating discussion or chat around what's been possible because of Mark.
Indeed. And to be honest, I'm sitting here and I'm just grinning, and just even thinking about Mark, it makes me smile. We had so much fun. I learned so much, but it was so much fun. And it's not just, he brought a lot of knowledge and capability into my life, and opened up my own view of myself and the potential that I had that I wasn't really even aware of at that stage. But he also brought a lot of life and joy, light into so I'm just smiling because just thinking about him makes me happy, because it was really enlightenment. I mean, we used to use that word in the medieval times, that knowledge being enlightenment, and this sense of light and joy, and very, very positive. I think it's not just about gaining knowledge, or gaining experience, or putting tools in your toolkit. It is about those things, but even more, it's about actually meeting a human being who, has gone the extra mile for you, who has, without any personal gain, invested their time and energy in you. And what a gift that is. And I would say to people, a couple of points here. One is, there is no growth without fear. We're all afraid of getting it wrong. We're all afraid of losing control. We're all afraid of being rejected, not being good enough, conflict that might ensue, and so on and so forth. We all have to work through those fears. And, part of becoming the person you have the potential to be is going to be working through those fears. And that's a lifelong journey. It just doesn't stop at some point. We're all always afraid of all sorts of stuff that may or may not actually pan out in reality. So one thing is, you have to embrace the fear if you really want to grow. That's part of the journey. So I think that's a really, really important point that, I'd like to raise and say, just trust in yourself. And if you can find somebody who's prepared to partner with you and hold your hand through that valley of death, because it can be awful at times. Let's say there's changes in the workplace and you've got to learn a whole load of new technologies and maybe, I don't know, a new language, and you think, oh gosh, how am I ever going to cope with all of this? Then again, take a step back and say, okay, what's the underlying fear? And is it really true? Because we're all, we're a function and a product of our own backgrounds. And there was an awful lot of good stuff in there always. There's an awful lot of rubbish in there as well, unfortunately. We've learned a lot of things over our life, and some of those core beliefs about ourselves are actually very destructive, very self-sabotaging, and very limiting. So sometimes those fears, we have to look at them and say, okay, well, why am I afraid of failing here? And why am I letting this actually dominate my thought and really undermine me? And really sort of pulling that apart and understanding what's going on in our own heads, because we need to question sometimes our own beliefs about ourselves, which can actually be very, very detrimental. And they're stopping us from really even having the chance to access that potential that we have. So I would say 95% of the work that I do is helping other people and helping myself embrace the fears that they have about getting out of that comfort zone, and you know, really embracing the opportunity that it represents. And it really is an opportunity. It doesn't feel nice at the time. I felt like I'd been smacked in the face. So you know,
I can
that sort of
imagine.
moment of, oh my goodness, I'm absolutely completely useless at this job, and if anybody ever finds out, they're going to sack me immediately. Sort of like panic moment. I used to say to my kids when they were little, rule number one is always don't panic. If you can stop yourself from panicking, because when we panic, we go into the reptilian brain, which is fight, flight, freeze. You know, that's not going to help. That's just going to get in the way. That makes us do all sorts of strange things. That's totally unhelpful. If we can just, you know, just hold it there and just, okay, take a step back and think, okay, so what's really going on here? And how can I sort of break this down into chunk, you know, bite-sized chunks that I can deal with this, is a great ability to step back and just look at yourself and think, okay, let's just calm it down. Let's just see what's going on here. I'm bound to feel afraid. This is new. I don't, you know, I'm in new territory. We're always afraid of things we don't know. That's normal. I accept that. I recognize that. But let's just step away from that for a moment and let's look at the opportunity here. Yeah.
I'm smiling because you've brought it back to you know, being parents, and I was going to do exactly the same and just say we have to be so careful what we say to our children, because they are so influenced by what's said time and time again. You know, the one that, you know, was said to me many times as a child: money doesn't grow on trees. Or you know, one at school: children should be seen and not heard. Yeah, you end up not speaking out in things, you know, and that's played out for me over my early life, you know, into work and, you know, education, and then into work, and yeah, it's taken a long time to find my voice and get my voice out there and have my, you know, have got something valuable to add. You know, because that was shut down at such an early age. So yeah, it is so interesting how much we are influenced by things that are said as throwaway comments that then become these ingrained beliefs that we have later on in life, and the work that it takes to unpick that and say, actually, you know, I've got a choice in what I live here. And how true is that? Actually, it's not true. I do have a voice, for example, and this is what I'm going to do with it. So, you know, thank you so much for that, Shirley. It's sparked off all sorts of thoughts once again. And yes, we shall all be looking out for the marks in our life, aka guardian angels, that help guide us and move us into a space that we either didn't know or didn't dare possible, to embrace those wonderful opportunities that come as a result. So thank you. Oh, sorry, go on.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I mentioned that about the 10 to 30%, that most of us are in that range of what we're actually doing. I think everyone, I've never met a person in my whole life that hasn't got an awful lot of value to add. It's a question of how to access their potential. I think if you're in the wrong space doing the wrong thing for the wrong reasons, chances are you're not bringing it only a tiny fraction of what you could be doing. And you'd be a lot happier if you were doing what you're truly passionate about and what you really enjoy doing. Certainly with my kids, and lucky I have 4, so, you know, I guess I'm going to get a wide variety of all sorts of different things in life. But I said, you know, worst case scenario is you follow exactly the same path that I took because you think that's the right answer, or because I'm actually influencing you to do that. Go out there, find what you're passionate about and do that, and live your life to the full. And don't be afraid to make mistakes, because, you know, learning by doing. So get out there, you know, try things out, see what works for you, and enjoy being curious about yourself, because it's a lifelong journey of, potential is what I would say. and it's a lot of fun. So, reinventing yourself, and certainly, I guess women have to do this purpose even more than men do, with families and the different roles that we're expected to take on, and that's incredibly challenging. And certainly as parents, talking about parents, we all are going to get it wrong. There is no such thing as perfect parenting. We're doing our best, and you can only ever do your best. So if you're doing your best as a parent, you're doing a great job already. But yeah, some of it is gonna, we are getting some of it wrong because it's so complex. So, don't beat yourself up about that. Keep doing your best and learning and growing. But again, if we're encouraging our children to be curious about themselves as young adults, then they'll work out the bits that don't work for them. And they can, get rid of the rubbish that's in there, as well as all the great gems that you've instilled in them. So, as I say, don't beat yourself up about parenting. Just keep doing the best you possibly can and learn from others.
Yeah, absolutely, Shirley. I've only got one daughter, but she's right at that, just starting her A levels now in the UK. Is that the equivalent of sort of 16 to 18 for anyone listening overseas? And she was sort of in a real dilemma about what to choose. And I said, look, choose what you choose. If you enjoy it, that's a real bonus, because it means you're going to learn more, take in more. Exactly what you're just saying is the sort of support that I've given her. And I said, if it ends up that that's not what you want to do, that's okay. You're only 16. You've got time, to try these things out and see how it feels, and see if that's taking you towards something that you're really interested in doing as a career. You've got time to try these things out. And I think sometimes she finds the sort of the coach in me difficult, because she just wants the answer. But she has to find the answer for herself. So,
we've all got to own our own truth. We've got to live our lives, not other people's lives. And I think that's essential, that, finding that answer. And it can be incredibly difficult. I mean, after she's done that, then it'll be, if she wants to go on to study, where does she go to study? What does she, it's just so vast. Trying to find that answer is also difficult. And I think as parents, learning to, again, we start very directive. We set very clear, we're looking at it as a leadership exercise, which it definitely is. We're starting with very clear frameworks, clear value sets, clear rules about how we, behaviors we accept and those we don't, what's negotiable, what's non-negotiable. We start quite directive in that sense, loving, but directive. But gradually, as they get older into the teenage years, it's much more hands-on. We really shift away from that directive into much more participative. And ultimately, we end up at servant leadership. We're there if they need us, when they need us. And if we've built a relationship based on trust, based on mutual respect, based on open communication, and it's a difficult road, we end up in servant leadership, which is, they come when they need help, support, or there's some sort of blockage, or they need something they can just discuss in a very open and safe psychological space. And we've earned the right to then be the servant leader and everything in between. So, as I say, if you're a parent, you're definitely a leader as well. Even if your job title doesn't give you any official authority or power, as a parent, you've got a great deal of leadership to do. So we're actually all on that journey, even if we don't think we are.
Definitely are in it together, Shirley. Look, what a fascinating conversation that we've had, and so sorry that this episode is coming to an end, and this is our final episode with you for now, because we may be able to entice you to come back and chat to us again one day in the future. But thank you so much, Shirley. You've shared so much of yourself, and that really is appreciated by me, and I know it will be by the listeners. So it's been great to get to know you a little bit better. And I wish you every success with the book writing. Don't stay up too late. And we'll catch up again soon. Thank you so much.
Thank Thank you very much indeed for having me, Paula. It's been absolutely great, and I've really enjoyed it very much. And I do hope there's some nuggets in there that will be useful for others.
Absolutely, there's plenty in there. Thank you, Shirley. Take care. Thank you for listening to Game of Leadership, the podcast for curious leaders. This has been the third episode and final episode for a little while anyway, with our guest, who shared their pivotal moments that make them the leader they are today. Again, I talk about uniqueness a lot. Every guest story and their pivotal moments, the challenges they faced, the issues they faced over the years to get to where they are now, and how they pulled themselves through all of that, makes them the leader they are today, and each one of those stories is unique and different. It's been an absolute pleasure to chat with them and see what that meant for them. Now, once again, it's your turn to reflect on what you've heard today, see what resonates for you, and think about what that might mean for your leadership moving forwards. I'm Paula Eddy Wilcox, and I look forward to welcoming you back next time on Game of Leadership, the podcast for curious leaders. Bye for now.